Om. Kujantam Rama Rameti Maduram Maduraksharam Aruhya Kavita Shakyam Vande Valmiki Kokilam. Ramaya Ramabhadraya Ramachandraya Vedase Raghunataya Nathaya Sitaya Pataye Namaha. Rama Rama Rameti Rame Rame Manorame Sahasranamadattullyam Ramanama Varanane. Let's pay our respects to Valmiki Maharishi for giving this Adi Kavya of Bhagavan Sri Rama. And let us take a minute or two to refresh our mind with the blessing of Bhagavan Sri Rama. And today we have a very interesting topic, best advice from the worst kind of people. And this is kind of like a mini series. We kick it off with Maricha. Typically, when we think of people, we classify them based on their gunas. Traditionally, if we get all Devi qualities, they were considered as Devas. But just because you are a Deva doesn't mean that you cannot go down in your thought process. It is not a permanent position, and as the thought process changes, they can also do something wrong. But by and large, their thought process is elevated. Then we have someone like us, human beings. We can either go up or down. So those first category was Devas, second category is Manushyas. The third category is what we call as, what the Rishis called as Asuras. They are primarily focused on materialistic thinking. Their interpretations of Shastras is kind of little different and twisted. And this causes them to a different level of state. Now, this has nothing to do with their ability to do tapasya, sadhana, their powers, abilities. In all those cases, they may even surpass human beings. It just tells that our state is either higher or lower. Now, the Asuras are primarily of two family groupings. So all of these people came from only Kashyapa Maharishi. All the children of Aditi were called Adityas. They also developed Devi qualities, so they become Devas. The ones who became Asuras were from two mothers. One is Diti, who were called Daityas, and the other one is called Dhanu, and they were called Danavas. So basically, we have seen that these people are also having a lot of power, spiritual power, focus, tremendous tapasya, ability, things like that. But their gunas and their interpretation of Shastras is not in the right order. That needs to be kept in the mind. Now what happens? If a person goes below this level on this chart, what the rishis called them was Rakshasas. So, by that yardstick, though Ravana was born in the parentage or the heritage of rishis, he is having only Rakshasa state of mind. So it is very important to understand that these classifications were based on gunas, not on like what they show in TV, like people with two horns, like two teeth, canine teeth sticking out. It's not like that. Those kind of caricatures have dented our real understanding of what these asuras and rakshasas are. Without digressing too much from our focus, today we are going to look at Mareecha. We all know that Maricha was a Rakshasa who did a lot of negative things. We see him way in the beginning in Balakanda itself. And his name reference continues all the way to Uttarakanda. Now, it is important for us to understand this Maricha character. See, every Kanda, there is one person who turns the direction of the storyline itself. The story of Ramayana is flowing in one direction, and this character comes and total change in direction. So every Kanda has one specialist. So we have Balakanda. The person who changes the direction of that, the tone and tenor of that, is Vishwamitra Maharishi. He takes complete charge of that Kanda. He is kind of like the one allocated for that Kanda, that he takes full control. Kaikeyi does the same for Ayodhya Kanda. If Kaikeyi were not to introduce her ideas, Ramayana would not have gone that way. Rama would have never gone out of Ayodhya. Same way Aranya Kanda. We see Shurpanaka. Kishkinda Kanda. See Sugriva. He takes complete charge and he takes the direction of Ramayana. Sundarakanda, the one and only superhero of all times. The real superhero of all times. Hanumanji. He is the only one who does miraculous things which we can't explain through our common sense or knowledge. All other characters, even Bhagavan Rama, what he does, we can logically give an explanation. How can you give an explanation to Sanjeevani Express? Not once, twice. How can you give an explanation to the exploits of Hanuman? Literally impossible. So every Kanda has got one character that totally transforms. But some characters get introduced in one, but they are kind of like important throughout. One such character is Mareecha. Mareecha is the son of Yaksha Sunda and Yakshini Tataka. We earlier looked at in one of our earlier talks that why Rama's first kill Tataka was a woman and why Krishna's first kill Putana was also a woman. We did a detailed analysis there. We also did analysis and we referred to Mareecha's incidents in how Rama's opponents saw Rama and how Rama saw his opponents. We saw two different talks on that. We saw there also. The characters are not going to be like in Mahabharata. They are not like 1,000 characters in Mahabharata. In Ramayana, the beauty is there are only few characters. But the way in which we look at things, we get different insights. So Mareecha is going to be our case study today. And Mareecha has interestingly told a lot of interesting observations, and most of the time when we show the Rakshasa we show him with two teeth and two horns and things like that, and we say ha ha ha, hoo, and that's it. So those kind of caricatures reduce the wisdom given by characters like Maricha, and they are confined to the Moola Shastra, Moola text only. Because most of our interpretations and impressions of Ramayana can be confined to the garbage bin. Now this Yaksha Sunda was very powerful. His wife Yakshini Tataka, she had the strength of like 10,000 elephants. She is very powerful. And Yakshas throughout, even in Mahabharata you can look, they are people with a lot of strength. They are referred as people or a race of people who have a lot of strength. Now what happened, our friend Sunda went and wanted to show his strength with Agastya Maharishi. And all Maharishi had to do was, one hunkara reduced him to an ash. So what happened, Tataka and Mareecha joined forces to attack on Agastya Maharishi. And since they were behaving like Rakshasas, like they wanted to catch hold of him and bite him and eat him kind of thing. So he said, like, you guys are behaving like Rakshasas, so better be in that state. It is very important to understand that all the rishis, so-called curses we see in the Puranic literature or Itihasas are only out of kindness and compassion to create that particular situation where we have to evolve and get out. For example, Ahalya. For example, Nahusha. He was cursed to be a Sarpa. For example, the fall of Yayati, which you can see in the 7-part series I recently completed. If you are interested, please go and refer the blog though. So the Rakshasa state of Tataka was a mere reflection of how she was already behaving. So she became a menace to Karusha and Malad, the two kind of republics that were there in the Gangetic belt, and they got reduced to a forest because these people were terrorizing and they were destroying all sorts of rishis, yagas, yajnas, and that, we know the story. That's why Vishwamitra went and asked Rama to come and Lakshmana came as bonus, and together they destroyed Tataka. After Tataka Vada, what our Maricha did not have the information was that Maharishi Vishwamitra had given a lot of weapon knowledge to that little boy. Remember, Rama was not even 16 years old. We will see the estimate and misunderstanding of Maricha in a few minutes. Now what happened? He thought Rama was a small boy and he started menacingly going towards where the yaga was happening, and Rama took a Manavastra and threw him 100 yojanas away, just like that. And then our guy is removed from the scene. Meanwhile, Subahu continued the attack and he perished with all the other Asuras who were, Rakshasas who were assisting him. Now here is the thing, we are moving the story to, we are following the story so that we understand the context. So Shurpanaka, our one of the characters who changed the course of Aranyakanda, she looks at Rama, she starts lusting after him. Rama kicks the bucket and points towards Lakshmana in a joke, practical joke. And she thought Lakshmana would also do to meet her lust demands. But since he kicked it back to Rama, she thought these two guys are playing football with me because of Sita. If I eat her, these two will be my pleasure toys. That was her grand plan. So seeing her threat become real, Rama asked Lakshmana to take charge, and Lakshmana uses minimum force to just chop her nose and ears. We see the same approach. Vibhishana says, hey, Hanuman cannot be killed because he is a Duta. But if you want, you can set light to his tail. See, for teaching Pakistan a lesson, all you have to do now is send an empty BrahMos missile, and that will do the case. You don't have to do anything. They will just keep wetting their own pants, and that will keep them busy for some time. So Shurpanakha goes and brings Kara and Dushana, and Kara and Dushana first send a small batch of people who were immediately dispatched to Yamaloka. And then Rama was there waiting for this army to show up, and 14,000 Rakshasas led by Kara, Dushana and Trishara come, and they were all destroyed in just 1.5 muhurtas. That is roughly 72 minutes in today's words. Now, the interesting thing was, as soon as this thing happened, our Ravana, his spy network is so powerful, there was only one survivor. Just like Maricha was the lone survivor, Rama kept him for a reason. Akampana was the lone survivor of this battle. He goes and reports to Ravana. The first thing he says is that this is a terrible challenge, but you cannot touch Rama frontally. If you try to attack him, you will be completely destroyed. This man took 14,000 people just on foot, as if it was like a walk in the park. So don't mess with him, but the easy way to trip him is he has one hook called Sita. And you know what? There is no woman in all the worlds that would even hold a candle to Sita. If you bring Sita, you are good to go. So our Ravana goes to meet Maricha, who is now living like a sage. And Maricha said, did some idiot fool you saying that he is your friend and gave this kind of ridiculous idea? Has someone made a decision to destroy all Rakshasa race and given you this kind of idea? What kind of nonsense is this? He said, why are you even entertaining these kind of thoughts? So Ravana said, like, you know what? That seems right. And he went back. Then comes Shurpanakha. See, Shurpanakha, many people don't know, was already married to a person called Vidyutjiva. See, that is why Uttarakhanda is very important. Some people opine that Uttarakhanda is an appendix. Yes, the name itself suggests it's an appendix. It's just like Harivamsa is an appendix to Srimad Bhagavata. It is an appendix, but there was a different style of writing, and there was a different way of giving the focus. And one more proof why Uttarakhanda is important is a lot of things that are referred in the previous Kandas would not be understandable without Uttarakhanda. So, Uttarakhanda is very crucial, and in this case the Uttarakhanda gives us the idea why Shurpanakha had a free hand. Because when Ravana was terrorizing the Devas and the Manavas and others, he was also terrorizing the Daityas and Danavas. So he was like a terror for everyone. Remember, he is a Rakshasa. He is not a Danava or he is not a Daitya. So his thought process was to terrorize. And when Shurpanaka's husband came to fight on behalf of their king, this superhero whom a lot of idiots and atheists, especially in South India, who they worship Ravana, right? They don't know Ramayana, that it was Ravana who made his own sister the widow. So Shurpanaka had a free pass. The other context to keep in mind is, see, Malad and Karusha, Tataka, all those people, where are they? They are very close to Ayodhya. Where is Kara, Dushana, Shurpanaka's territory? Janasthana, central India. Where was Ravana's main territory? Lanka. Now, remember, negativity is expanding everywhere and somebody has to start challenging it. If we don't do that, that is the message of Ramayana. See, in Afghanistan something happens. If you go and say Sanatana Dharma, and before you say the word Sanatana Dharma, the body and head has a small separation because of the way these people believe in their barbaric cult. You can do the same thing in Pakistan too. But the sad state of affairs is now Ayodhya is also under threat. That is India. India is also under threat. Bharatavarsha is also under threat. Now we have to awaken the little Rama in us and start defending Dharma. That is one of the messages we understand from Maricha. But anyways, it is important to understand a new term we will have to introduce here. Our rishis did a lot of psychological analysis and they were able to understand the different states of human beings. So we all know that desire is the root of all things. One idea of desire, why do we have desire? We already have discussed that, but at a high level, desire is basically one of our Atma's quest to make it more complete. But when desire comes, usually it comes along with attachment. It is very difficult and extremely difficult for an average person to look at desire and attachment as two different entities in their practical life. I am not saying it is impossible, it's almost next to impossible. So what happens, this desire and attachment, it is like you take a piece of paper and you put like a Gorilla Glue or Fevicol or something like that. It is basically going to be stuck. How can you remove that glue from that paper? If you scrap it, the paper is also going to come, right? This karma plus this attachment is that potent combination. Now this karma and attachment goes to a different level. If the intensity of karma and the intensity of attachment go to a very high state, our ancient rishis gave a separate name for that state. It is called Abhishwangam. In this state of Abhishwangam, the desires cannot be controlled. It doesn't understand logic. No matter, even if Bhagavan himself comes and tells, nothing can go to that state. How do we know that even such a state exists? we hear when Ravana gets killed, his chief queen Mandodari comes and she starts lamenting. And one of the things she says is, Ravana, do you think Rama, after all, a human being? Now, here she is again sarcastically saying, because Ravana refused to understand that Rama was not an ordinary human being. Who could have built such a bridge in 5 days across, with landed so many thousands and millions of troops across to your doorstep? But Ravana refused to understand, and he thought Rama was just an ordinary human being. Here, Mandodari is saying, Ravana, you just merely fell to your own senses and desires. You succumbed to them. Earlier, when you did tapasya, you were able to get all wonderful boons. But later, looks like the senses, the indriyas have revolted against you, and you are succumbing to this kind of abhishwangam. So, Ravana is basically trying to, is understanding Ramayana is a simple story, simple plot, but the amount of interconnections, the amount of portals it opens is mind-blowing. Every word opens the door, a key to a concept or an idea. Every few sentences that are uttered, they open to a totally different portal. And most of the time what happens, in the name of following the story, we forget following these ideas. And that is the tragedy of the average Ramayana reader. And we are all now smarter by understanding, and I hope that none of us will succumb to that in future at least. Now let's go back to Maricha. What's happening? Maricha wanted to do a psychological attack. Remember, he had already approached Mareecha. Now, after Shurpanaka comes and laments, and she baits him with the same beautiful woman theory. Remember, if you have a character flaw, everybody around you is going to take advantage of it. It's obvious. If I have a character flaw, why are people around me not going to take advantage? And every person, yata raja tata praja, right? But it's also the understanding, like you have to understand, like whoever is the king, his moods and his requirements are always met by his sycophant followers. So what happens when first our Akampana did the bait, then Shurpanaka did the bait. Now Shurpanaka also abused and attacked his ego. Now he is doubly enraged, so he goes back to Maricha in secrecy. Now you have to understand, there are a lot of hidden messages there. Now we are not going to go and understand why he went in secrecy, what he did. We are not going to go into that. We are just going to go back to the plot of today. So Maricha is wondering, like, hey, how come you came back like a bounced ball? You went just now. Is there something wrong? Is everything okay? You just went like a day ago and you are back here. And you are not a guy whom I see here like that often, right? So Ravana comes with a theory and he starts unloading all sorts of bad things about Rama. He wants to take the approach, like if I come here. So I have our friend Ganeshji. Now I have never met him in person. Now I come and meet Ganeshji. Then I start telling all sorts of bad things about people he has never met. Now Ganeshji and I have little connection through Clubhouse, but I am trying to take advantage of that connection and come and tell, you know what, this person did this, that person did this. Now, I am trying to introduce a bias into his mind. Now, if that person is also cut from the same cloth like I am, obviously I will be able to influence. Now, if he is a person of a superior dharma, he is going to look at me and he is going to look through the lie and untruth through and through. So that's what is happening here. We are going to be looking at few slokas and then it's going to be interesting today. So Ravana comes and tells a lot of bad things about Rama on the assumption that Maricha has no idea about Rama. So he says, Pitra nerasta krudena sa bharya kshina jivitaha sa hanto tasya sainasya ramaha kshatriya pamsanaha. What he says is, let's take few words. We don't have to do word for word, but we need to understand this because we are trying to analyze how Ravana is making a reflection of him on Rama. This is exactly what we do. If I look at the universe, my understanding is severely colored by my gunas and vasanas. So if a jaundiced person is looking at the world, everything is going to be yellow. I wear rose color glasses, the whole world looks rosy. So same way here he says, this fellow ran away from an angry father. Okay? Rama ran away from his angry father and he came to Dandaka Vana because of, along with his wife. And you know what? He is such a shameless guy. He's talking about Rama here, okay? That he killed my army. And you know what? He is Kshina Jivita. He is like having like very, very limited lifespan. He's like a mosquito, fit to be just hit, swatted and killed. He's just Kshina Jivita. And then he kicks into the next gear. He says, Ashalila, Ashilaha. Shila means character, virtue, a virtuous person. We in fact name girls after the word Sheila, that hoping that the child will be having good character. Ashila means characterless. So he says Rama is characterless fellow. Karkashaha. He says Ashilaha Karkashaha Tikshno Murko Lubdo Ajita Indriha Tyakta Dharma tu Adharma Atma Bhutanam Ahitarataha. So let's break this word. Now it is very important to understand these words because we are going to see the counter in a minute. We already saw Ashilaha. Karkashaha means very crude, brutal, like barbaric guy. You know, like he has no kind of like standards kind of thing. Tikshanaha. He is like a raging conflagration, like a firestorm. He is not like someone who is who doesn't know how to control himself. Lubdo. Lubdo means like person who is like very, very selfish. Then he says Murka. Murka means like we already know it's like a mindless person, senseless person, like an idiot, like he doesn't know what he is doing kind of thing. Ajita Indriya. Now he says Rama is a person who doesn't know how to control his senses. Now this is irony because we gave a talk few months ago. We discussed how Rama, who is raised to be the next crown prince. Remember, in India we raise clown prince. In Britain we have a prince who is waiting for his mother to die for decades now. So that is a joker prince. But Rama is the crown prince. Now he is 25 years old. And Dasharatha calls the previous day and he says, we are declaring throughout the city and the kingdom that tomorrow morning you will be crowned as the crown prince and eventually king. So you're going to take over the reins. And Rama is now summoned in the morning and he is ready even before Brahma Muhurta. That's probably like around 4 o'clock. And he comes and Kaikeyi says, Dasharatha could not even speak. Kaikeyi says, hey, your father already is caught in a corner. He gave me 2 boons. One of it is to quit this kingdom. Second one is to go to the forest for 14 years. Not only 14 years, you have to go and live like a hermit. You have to wear Kshira Vastra and you have to wear Chira Vastra and you have to just like a deer skin and you have to wear like a jute and bark and things like that. That's all you can wear. And you have to not even cut your hair. You have to make it like a knotted hair, like 14 years, no haircut, no nothing. So your whole hair will be knotted, right? Like we call it jata mudi in, we say. So he says, Rama, even in that situation, didn't lose his calm. And what didn't happen was a change in his countenance. The smile was always there. But that Rama is being called by, ironically being certified by Ravana as Ajita Indriya. And then he says Tyakta Dharma. That means that he has discarded all Dharma. Who is saying that? Ravana. And then he says Adharma Atma. He is like not only he has left Dharma, his entire Atma is filled with Adharma. Why? Because he killed all my people. And then he says, this is the interesting thing. Bhutanam ahitarataha. So all living beings are being upset because Rama is there. You say Rama? The funny thing is the very word Rama means Ramate iti Ramaha. So when you say everything is having bliss and happiness when you just think and speak of the word Rama. Now here our man is certifying that Rama is exactly the opposite. Sarva Bhuta Hita. Now here also Ravana, the word etymologically it means the one, here there are 2 meanings. One, Ravana is crying in pain because of Kailaya and things like that. But when all jivas listen to the word Ravana, they are crying in fear. So both are true. So this guy is now certifying character by character by character, adjective after adjective after adjective about Rama, but exactly opposite of what Rama is and stands for. So where did he get all these characters? That is where, if you go and look at someone, so when we were small kids, we used to point out at other kids doing bad things, right? So I recall one of my teachers, she would say, when you point at anyone, more fingers are pointing back at you than the finger you are pointing at them. So it basically speaks volumes about you, that you are only looking at all this negativity and you are pointing at them. So you are only discovering negativity. Of course, we were so young and imbecile. So we used to joke the teacher and tell that, look, from now on we won't point one finger, we will point all the entire hand, all the fingers. We were joking. We were kind of like that dumb. But as time passes by, you understand the wisdom of what the teacher was trying to tell, and that is exactly what we can see in. So the character what Ravana was seeing in Rama was all biased and cooked up. How do we know this? Now here, first Maricha listens to what Ravana has got, his proposition. He says, go as a golden deer, trick Sita, will kidnap her. This is the plan. Now Maricha is now responding back. this is very important to understand for us, and that is the foundation of the wisdom we are going to derive from Maricha. He says, Nacha pitra pariyakto na amaryad katanchanaha na lubdo na cha dushilaha na cha kshatriye pamsanaha na cha dharmo gunair hinaha hinau kausalya ananda vardanaha na cha tikshno hi bhutanam sarva bhuta hite rataha. Now, instead of saying, Rama, you are 100% wrong, here look how vehemently every single syllable is being countered by Maricha. We have to see, Maricha was one of Ravana's primary lackeys who used to spread terror in all the known worlds. And if they had a legitimate victory, these characters would come and make a big deal out of it. Now, the interesting thing about Ravana's hollow victories, and many of them are described in detail in Uttarakanda, right? Because many of Ravana's victories were only hollow. Because he would come after getting beaten in a battle and he would spread the message warfare that we won. You think that this is a new technique that we are all following? Go and look at 1965 war, what Pakistan is still claiming that they won the war. Go and look at 1971 war, they still teach their people that all the people in Pakistan still believe that despite losing East Pakistan as Bangladesh, Pakistan won the 1971 war. They continue to believe that the Kargil war was won by them. I am not talking about a narrative which I am trying to spin. I am telling what the average Pakistani is tutored and made to believe. This was exactly the same thing that happened in the hollow victories or in the non-existent victories of Ravana, and Maricha was a key player there, either in getting the war or spreading this kind of lies back in his place. So the deception of Maricha was well known to Ravana. Ravana was well known as a deceptive fellow to Maricha. They both knew each other very well. But Maricha, instead of countering and saying, no, what you are saying is all wrong, he is saying, no, he did not run away. His father did not send him out. He did not give up dharma. He is not a selfish person. He is not a person of bad character. He is not a person who is a fake kshatriya. He is not a person who is devoid of dharma. He is not a person who is like a raging firestorm. He is not like a person. He is the person who brings ananda. Kausalya anandam vardanaha. The one who brings joy to Kausalya. He didn't run away, and he is the one who enhances delight of. Then he says, what did our Ravana say? He said, this is the term Ravana himself is, Bhutanam ahita rata. Now he counters that with the exact opposite. He says, this is a very key word that helps us understand the character and the depth of Rama. Sarva bhuta hite rata. Rama is the one who enhances the joy in every living being and is taking care of their welfare. Now, who else can do that? Now, you may have a family. You can take care of your family. So, you can bring joy to your family. Now, you may be such a nice guy. You may be unlike those billionaire philanthropists who do all sorts of shady things. I'm not talking about Bill Gates kind of cheap character, or I'm not talking about all these Google founders and that sort of thing. I'm not talking about Amazon guy who would go and spoil another person's marriage and take his wife. I'm not talking about these. Let's assume that you are a billionaire and you are doing a lot of good philanthropy. It's kind of like a oxymoron statement, but let's take it on faith. even that person cannot bring joy to anything and everything. So there is only one person who fits that tag, one entity, Bhagavan. Sarva Bhuta Hite Rataha. Now Maricha, how does he know? That's an interesting point. Now he doesn't stop there. See, remember, our Ravana said one or two lines, but our guy is not happy with just one line rebuttal. He is now telling, Vanchitam Pitram Drishtva Kekeya Satyavadinam Karishyami iti Dharmatma Tata Pravijito Vanam. He says, his father was a great proponent of Satya, truth. And Kaikeyi checkmated that guy. And he was put on a back corner. And Rama, to help his father, he completely outwitted Kaikeyi's checkmate. Wow. This is really deep understanding that a guy, a Rakshasa, is sitting in some other corner of earth, is giving the understanding to another Rakshasa. This is getting more interesting. Now he says, Na Ramaha, Rama is definitely not Karkashaha. We already said Rama is not ruthless. Tataha na avidvanam na ajita indriha. Now he says na avidvanaha. He is not like a rustic guy. He is a very scholarly guy. He knows everything inside out. Na ajita indriya. That means he is a controller of his senses. Anrutam na shutam chaiva naiva tvam vaktum arasi. Now he says, he declares, he says, look here, boy, you have absolutely no idea about what you are talking. Go and get some knowledge about what you are talking before you open your mouth. Don't give me your BS to me. I am PhD in Rama and you don't even know the kindergarten level. And you are coming and telling all these lies to me. Your bundle of lies will not work with me. And then Maricha gives us the biggest insight in entire Ramayana. Valmiki Maharishi did not give this insight. His parents, of course, needless to say, Vasishtha Maharishi knew that, but he didn't express it. Vishwamitra knew this, but he didn't express it. Then the Dasharatha knew nothing. He thought it was his son. So that is why he goes to Swarga. He didn't go to Vaikunta. He is still stuck in Swarga only because he thinks his son was only a virtuous person. He didn't see as Bhagavan. Kausalya was the mother. She did so many punya to even have Rama. But she didn't have that deep insight. Kaikeyi was doing that to make the Ramayana go to the next chapter. So we can't hold grudge against her because she reconciles and she comes back to normal terms. And Rama is definitely having special corner for Kaikeyi because she took it upon herself to move the plot. But Sumitra is one character who knew that Rama was Bhagavan amongst the three mothers. Then we see glimpses of Rama trying to control his divinity and act like a human being with limited results. When we see Jatayu and things like the incidents and things like that. We also see his prowess, but we don't see all that. Tara is able to give us an insight. Tara is Vali's wife. And she gives us an insight that Rama is not an ordinary human being. Mandodari tells a lot of secrets. We saw how the enemies saw Rama. We gave a different lecture a few weeks or months ago. If you are interested, you can feel free to go and look at the YouTube channel for the old talk with the namesake YouTube channel. You get both the Tamil and English playlists. Now, the entire talk what we are discussing is also available as an article with references to slokas and things like that, so that you can go and make a quick read or like your own personal research. That is pinned on the top of the room. Now here, our person, all these characters, Mandodari also gives that, Mandodari clearly says that this person is not a human being, he is Vishnu himself, right? But the very first person who puts the spotlight, who gives 100% clarity that how is Bhagavan here, how is Rama here? He says, Ramo Vigrahavan Dharmaha, Sadhu Satya Parakramaha, Raja Sarvasya Lokasya Devanam Iva Vasavaha. The second line says like, hey, he is like Indra. It's okay. But the first line is very, very, very powerful. Ramo Vigrahavan Dharmaha. See, we have highlighted this point. We will again touch base because this is a deep philosophy that Maricha is talking about. People ask, especially atheists ask, can you produce your God? Now, first we are not going to reduce Bhagavan to God because God is an Abrahamic word which has a very limited functionality and theological use. Let's stick with Bhagavan or Paramatma. If you take all religions, ideas, philosophies, in Eastern, Western, everything, you can reduce the entire ideas in the universe or multiverse, whatever you want to look at it, Prapancha, the world of 5 elements. That's what Prapancha means. Because we also have a multiverse idea, if you look at it in Bhagavatam, right? We are not stuck with the universe model. That is the Western science. And today the same science is saying, oh, there is a multiverse. So here we go. What we are looking at, there is one principle what we call as Atma. Basically in English you want to translate that, it says as I. What I refer as I, whether it is the body, mind, the life force, the intellect or the real self, that is subject to my limited understanding and distortion. But there is a clear entity called Atma. There is a second entity called Prapancha, that is the universe of or the multiverse of 5 elements. The third thing is something that encompasses these two. It is not a mere summum bonum of all the things that are contained in the Prapancha. That is called, that is extends beyond this Prapancha, that is called Paramatma. That is called Purushaha. Now, this entity is basically, all these 3 things are only there. Now, what is the thing that connects the Atma with Paramatma? So, we also understand this Paramatma principle is all pervading. Then I want to demonstrate and say, hey, come on, Krishna, come and stand in front of these atheist people, come and show me. It's not going to work. So, how does Bhagavan exist in this world of what is familiar to us? So, our ancients have told there are 2 levels at which we perceive consciousness. One is at the highest level and then at the worldly level. So, if you are looking at the Bhagavan's way of looking, if Bhagavan is looking at this Prapancha, he is not going to look at me, you and all the difference. See, if you are turning away from me, I come and poke your left hand, right? Because most of us use the left hand for different purposes, right? Unless you are a left-hander. So, will you see that, okay, I don't care if you pinch my left hand, I don't care. Your sense of I is still there. You are still going to defend yourself. You are still going to try to protect yourself. So, the same way, all the different entities that you see in the world as what we call as Atma, 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 all this collection of it are all representation of the same Paramatma. But Bhagavan is not going to see that them as different. He is not going to differentiate between the right hand and the left hand, the right eye and the left eye. To him, everything is the same. That is what we call as Paramarthika plane. Then we have something called as Laukika plane, the plane which we understand. See, there are people who speak Advaita. A lot of us here also follow Advaita. But the problem is, if you are following Advaita, all theoretical Advaita, from tomorrow you should not eat. If you get a headache, you should not apply some medicine. But we are also in this plane. So, just like a light particle, photon is also a wave and also a particle. Same way, Bhagavan and the world, what we understand in this plane is what we understand as our plane. So, how does Bhagavan operate in this plane? He cannot operate in the same Paramarthika level because I immediately come with my limitation. What is this I? This self-arrogating principle, this principle that keeps limiting everything, and it is because of Ajnana, Ahamkara, it keeps saying that I, me, myself. So Bhagavan operates in this world as Dharma. And whenever you see, you drop something from your hand, what is going to happen? It is going to fall. It's not going to fly because the laws of gravity are still in play. But if you do the same thing in outer space, it is going to just go away from you. It's going to continue to go in the different direction. So understand that the laws of nature, that is a small subset of Dharma. Right? So when we say Bhagavan operates in Dharma, that Dharma itself is Bhagavan. Because Dharma has two properties. Driyate iti dharmaha. Dharayate. So what? And the other thing is dharayate iti dharmaha. That which is upheld is dharma. That which has to be upheld is also dharma. So you can interpret it in both ways. Now what is the same thing with Bhagavan? Does Bhagavan upholds all this universe? Yes. Everything in it is upheld by him. But we also uphold him in our hearts. Every Bhakta is also upholding Bhagavan in his heart. So, Bhakta and the Dharma and Bhagavan have the same characteristic. That's another proof for our understanding. So, now Maricha declares Ramo Vigrahavan Dharmaha. That means if you take all the Dharma in the universe and you make a form out of it, that form will look just like Rama. Isn't it amazing? This level of clarity and depth coming from a Rakshasa. We already defined who a Rakshasa was in the beginning. Now, let us go to the next part. This is where the wisdom starts kicking into the next level. Right? Now, we get, first he countered who Rama was, and then he declared the state of Rama. Then he said, this is Rama. And now he says, I will read these words. Even most people don't understand Samskrita. They will be able to still follow because all Indic languages have these words. But we'll go back to the words in a second. Vrikshe vrikshehi pashyami. That means every single tree I see is Rama. What do you see? Chira Krishna Ajina Ambaram. Now Chira means like a deer skin. Krishna, black deer skin. Right? Black Krishna Ajina Ambaram. Now that and also jute cloth. And also all this cloth, who is wearing? Grihita Dhanusham Ramam Pasha Hastam Iva Antakam. Now, the Lord of Death, Yama, is wielding the Pasha. He holds a noose. which he ties on every jiva when his time is come. That's why his word is, the word, choice of word you say, the word is used antakam. You could have used the word yama or some other word that refers to yama, but uses the word antakam. That means this one is the end game. This one will terminate. He's trying to give, see, the choice of words, again we will end up in another lecture. We don't want to go there. Let's come back to this. He sees Rama with bow and arrow in hand, and that reminds him of Yama with the noose. We have to understand why. We will come back to that in a second. And then he says, he is able to see all these. We are going to see a couple more in this. We are going to see Api Rama Sahasrani Bitaha Pashyami Ravana Rama Bhutam Idam Sarvam Aranyam Pratibhati Me. What he says is, hey, when I look at any tree, it looks like Rama. And then I also look, there are thousands of Ramas. Api Rama Sahasrani Bitaha. I see thousands of Rama, all terrifying form of Rama only. Why? We will see that in a minute. Why can't you see the nice face of Rama? We will see that in a second. Rama Bhutam Idam Sarvam. Not only I see thousands of Rama, I see that everything, the entire forest itself is reflecting one giant Rama. Sometimes he is seeing many Ramas. Sometimes he sees the whole forest is looking like one Rama. At times each tree is looking like 1,000 Ramas. Another time he is looking, everything is one Rama. Then he says, Ramam eva hi pashyami rahita rakshaseswara. I can only see Rama everywhere. Drishtva swapna gatam Ramam uddha brahmami vichetanaha. He says, even in dreaming state I see only Rama only. Oh my God. I can't even go and sleep. Even in dream. See, I don't even have sleep now. So we will come back to a second and analyze these, because these are very interesting states of consciousness. Then he put one big word, big sentence. He says, Rakara adini namani Rama trastaya Ravana stanani cha rataha cha eva vitrasama janyanti me. What he is saying is, whenever the word, the syllable starts with Ra, like say Ratri, Ratna, that itself is enough to send me into a bout of diarrhea, because the word Ra itself is enough to send me to coma. I don't even want to finish the word Ma. I don't know. If you say Ra, I think it is Rama only. And I see the terrifying form of Rama everywhere. And he says, Ravana, you need to understand, you think you have an experience with Rama. I am going to tell you, I have a different experience with Rama. I already told you how when Vishwamitra was doing the yaga, that yajna, I went and tried to, I thought it was like swatting a mosquito, because he opened, because remember, we earlier saw this problem, right? What is the Ramayana teaching us? Uphold Dharma. And today all Hindus have become spineless, because we have been deracinated, we have been secularized and immersed in material mindfulness, right? So what is happening is, our Dharma, we are cleaved of Dharma. So we don't have the right understanding. Here, Vishwamitra Maharishi could have easily taken care of Subahu, Maricha and others. But if he did that, his tapasya would be lost. It would be like hurt. So since he was keeping quiet, these guys got more emboldened and started creating more problem. And more problem, they were put into a bind more. So till the time Rama came to the picture, Dharma was in grave trouble. Till the time we waken up that Rama inside us and protect the Dharma, Sanatana Dharma will always be at fault, at fear, will always be pulled down by these inimical forces. So what Maricha assumed that Vishwamitra was afraid of him was not true. He also made a miscalculation. Remember, Rama was approaching 16. He was probably 15 plus, but not 16. That's the time when he comes. But he again underestimates him as Rama to be only 12 years. He says this fellow doesn't even have a mustache growing, not even one mustache hair. Okay? He tells this. Now what happened? Rama threw him out using Manavastra. Remember, in the night between going to that ashram, Siddhashram, and going to Tataka's death, Rama and Lakshmana are imported all astras. So they are well prepared. That information is also not available for our Maricha. So much analysis he has done, but sometimes knowledge is power, right? When you know that, especially if you can apply. So he assumed Rama was a small lad and he wanted to fight, but now he got thrown. Now many years he resolved to himself not to go near Rama. And then he was harassing all the rishis in Dandakavana. He moved south. His territory he moved from Malad and Karusha, which was reclaimed by Rama. Remember, we were all talking about how to reclaim the territory. So unless we make Ayodhya, that is India or Bharata, to become stronger in Dharma, we can't be fooling ourselves by saying we are Vishwaguru, Dharma Guru and all those things. We have to establish Dharma in India. Our job is not to go and spread it in US or Canada or UK and all. They will automatically get the light of this Dharma, but we have to re-establish that back in India. That's the message from Ramayana. Only when Malada and Karusha were reclaimed from Rakshasa hold, Rama started moving south to Dandakavana and eventually further down. So this Maricha was a cannibal. He was catching hold of Maharishis and he would be eating them and living on their flesh. So remember, we talked about Rakshasas. These Rakshasa thought process people are even today available amongst us in the form of many politicians, businessmen, and a lot of such people. But anyway, we are not doing character analysis of society. That's for a different time. So here, what happened? Rama, Lakshmana and Sita enter the forest. And they understood that Maricha was disguised in the form of a cannibalistic animal, and along with his two sidekicks, he was terrorizing and eating up all these rishis who are doing tapasya. So Rama sent 3 arrows. 2 of them hit the mark. The third one came close to this fellow and it deliberately threatened him and let him go. Now, having 2 encounters with Rama, Maricha tries to tell, hey Ravana, don't even misunderstand him for a human being or whatever. Don't underestimate his weapon range or his weapon skill. Don't be fooled by his disguise as an ascetic, although he is living as an ascetic. Don't do all these foolish things. And then he says one more interesting thing. Ravana, do you remember all the great asuras like Namuchi and Bali and all those people? Those people were like just swatted by Mahavishnu. Why did he go and refer Bali? That's an interesting thing. Again, you need to know Uttarakanda, then only you will understand. I told you many hollow victories, right? During one such expedition of hollowness, Ravana used to go and challenge the person in that kingdom or wherever and say like, hey, give me a battle or accept my rule. That was his tagline. And when he went there, he saw a land where there was no one living. Only one person was living there and in a beautiful palace. And there was one guard in the palace. And then he goes inside and he finds Mahabali was there. And he says like, you are afraid of this guard, why don't you leave this place? Come with me, I will take you. He says, do you know who that guard is? That is Mahavishnu. You can only see him because he chose to show him to you. Now go and see. You won't even see him. He goes and sees he is not even there. Then he says, hey, you know what? You are also an Asura, but it's funny that you are hiding here. Why don't you sponsor some terrorism for me? You know, like we have all these wonderful countries that spread terrorism, right? Pretty much the entire Islamic belt. Like you can spread it through radio waves, TV waves like Al Jazeera. Or you can do it like Pakistan, like actual sponsorship, even at the cost of self-destruction. So why don't you do something like that? So he said, whatever wealth is there, you can carry, take it. So he roamed the land and he found a huge circular object that was taller than a mountain. He came back and reported, can I take that? It is a gold with lots of embedded diamonds and all the other precious stones. He said, take it. He tried to lift it. He could not. He couldn't even move it. Remember, this was the guy who lifted Himalayas and tried to show his strength to Shiva Bhagavan. That's where he got crushed and Dashanana became Ravana there only. But he came back to Mahabali and said like, I don't know, I can't carry that. That seems to be like too big. I can't even break it. I can't do anything on that object. What is that object? He said, idiot, that object was one of the parts of the earring of Hiranyakashipu. Can you imagine the might of that Hiranyakashipu? And he was humbled by Mahavishnu during Narasimha Avatara. So the same word Narasimha Avatara is also indirectly used by Maricha. He says, if a lion is standing and you are right behind the lion, lion did not see you. Will you be an idiot to go and pull its tail? When you pull that lion's tail, you will get along with that lion, you will get the anger of the lion, you will also get the lion's claws and you will get the lion's paw, you will get the lion's teeth sunk in you. This Rama is like that lion. He is standing the other side with looking at Sita. He is not even interested about, he doesn't even know Lanka. You give him a map, he is like the average American, they can't even show anything on the map. He is like that. He doesn't even know Lanka. Why are you deliberately going and pulling that Narasimham? So like that he says all these beautiful psychological messages. But remember what was the mindset of Ravana? We saw that in the beginning itself. If you recall, we used the word Abhishwangam. In this state, even if Bhagavan comes and tells, nothing will go inside. So, finally, when Ravana, after listening to all this lecture, he said, stop. I am the king. You do what I say. Now, here is the probability map for you. You have encountered Rama 2 times. You escaped 2 times. So, if you go and be part of my plan to be the golden deer and trick Sita, there is a chance that you may still live. You already tricked Rama twice, right? So maybe you will get lucky. But if you don't cooperate, your probability of dying right now is 100%. I am going to kill you. And Maricha gave in to Ravana. Contrast that with Vibhishana. When Ravana said, I will kill you, his life was threatened. Vibhishana was more deep rooted in Dharma. He left his wealth, his family, everyone, and he went to Rama's side. Why did Maricha not do that? Because Maricha was still a Rakshasa in the heart of hearts. There was no transformation. It is just like we go read Ramayana, we listen to Upanishads, we do Bhagavad Gita, and then we say, yeah, I do understand everything. And then we go back to our normal life and we don't apply any of the wisdom which we have heard. So more or less we are also simulating Maricha's mindset. We have the wisdom, but we don't apply it. Now, that's not to be critical on us. It is just a state which we can go past. Now, we looked at the story. So, bear with me. Now, we went bit more in detail. Now, after knowing the story, how is it applicable to us? If we don't do that part, we will not do justice to this talk. So, at the risk of going little overboard in time, I ask for your sincere indulgence, because without this practical hitch, all this knowledge would remain as a fictional story. And that is one of the biggest problem with this current generation. When we look at all these Itihasa Puranas, we look at it from a story plot perspective. We don't take that and take the essence out of it, apply it in our life, have that guna karma transformation, that guna karma transformation changing our swadharma itself and our behavior itself, and we are not going to the next step. So let us do this practical application. The very first thing is, everything happens in this life, in this universe, including what happened in Itihasa Puranas, for a reason. So there are people who do comparisons endlessly, right? They compare, what Shiva is this power, Vishnu only so much power, or the other way around. Or even if you are a Vaishnavite, they compare, what? Rama only less power, Krishna more power, or Rama is great, Krishna is not great. We do all these idiotic things. Do you think that anyone in a sane mind would do that? But there are a lot of people who call themselves astikas, they still do this kind of stupidity. So, at the risk of understanding, not misunderstanding, let us make our point very clear. All the expressions of Paramatma, whether it is Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshwara, or whether it is the different avatars of Rama or Krishna, they are all the expressions of the same Paramatma. So let us not forget that basic premise. Now, we saw that how Maricha was let go twice. Now, usually I have heard a couple of Krishna supporters come and say that Rama could not even find target. Nothing could be more blasphemous or idiotic. I am unfortunately stuck with that adjective because that seems to be the word that aptly describes this kind of mindset. So we have to understand this in our context, in our life. See, one of the most popular questions that keep coming. Let's say that 7 days I open the Q&A session. At least weekly 2 to 3 times this question will come. Why do bad things happen to good people? Basic understanding, we don't understand. See, whatever karma we do, that karma phala will find us one way or the other. Just like bana, Rama's arrow will always find its target. We will always find, Arvindji, can you hear me? Somebody is saying that they can't hear. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you clearly.
Okay, thank you. So basically, let me hold it closer. Basically, our karma and karma phala will always find target. So if you don't believe this, look at it like this. How many years Bill Cosby was abusing women and easily getting away because he used to drug them? Did he get caught? Did he get disgraced? Now, you can say, man, he did so many years. You find all this Ponzi scheme guys. Some of them run for few years, some of them for even few decades. Did they get caught? Yes. So all these things, what happens, one day or the other we will find exposure. Now let's say that you are so smart that you are able to cover up all your tracks. You are so smart that you can even fool yourself. That's a big statement, right? We can't fool ourselves, but we think that we can fool ourselves. But that is where we tend to misunderstand. There is a gap between the karma and karma phala. Like if you drop a ball, immediately it's going to fall. But if somebody get married, they got married and they got excited, you have to wait for 10 months to have a baby. So the understanding is some karmas will immediately give karma phala. Like if you touch a hot plate or if you touch a electric outlet, you're going to get a shock or a heat, a burn. Immediate, it's instantaneous. But if you are going to do something else, it takes its own time for it to form. That is going to depend on karma phala. So what we think is, I can easily cheat people, I can easily get away with it, I can easily do an adharma, I can escape. But what happens? You may not be able to escape forever, assuming that you left the body before escaping. You are so smart, you got a deal. Now, what Sanatana Dharma says, that I-ness, that package, what is closest to you? You have your causal body, your subtle body. This subtle body is enveloping the causal body. The subtle body comprises of all your mind, the impressions of all your karmas, and the basically your the predecessors of your senses. So depending on your karma, you are going to be born. There are a lot of people born with all odd some people are born without eyes, some people are born without limbs, and so on and so forth, right? They are born with genetic disorders. They are born into poverty. They are born in places like Afghanistan. What did that child do? Now, only karma theory can explain you all this. Imagine if you are born in the desert cult in Afghanistan, it's not that bad. Even if you are born as a woman let's say that you are a Hindu and you are born in Afghanistan. What kind of situation will that be? right? You may have all the good samskaras to be born as a Hindu, but you are born in Afghanistan of today. What will happen? So what we don't understand is karma and karma phala are impeccable, and their results will always find our way. The second thing is, we normally try to talk less about our bad karmas and we amplify it for others. And whenever we certify ourselves, we say like, hey, I'm not a bad guy. I may do one or two bad things, but I am not a bad guy. Will anybody come and say, I have done so many bad karmas? So what happens is, one of the lament of Maricha is, hey, I'm going to get destroyed because of wrong deeds of others. Like, it's called collateral damage. So when the US was happily bombing in Iraq and Afghanistan, how much collateral damage happened? Of course, they are having no remorse. That's a land of wars and selling war equipment. So they don't understand any. If it is their citizen, they will bother. Otherwise, they won't. So, and now that is all coming back to haunt them. That is a different thing. That is where the karma theory gets again blended. Why are we talking about karma when we are talking about Maricha's story? Because a lot of this happens in the conversation. We didn't have time to go in detail. Now what happens if we end up in a bad place, in a bad association, we end up with a collateral. There is an example of given by Maricha. One of the examples, he says to Ravana, hey, if a lot of snakes, I'm assuming water snakes, if a lake is infested with all these snakes, what happens to all the fishes? They are going to be eaten up by this. So it is association, and if somebody is coming to eradicate all the snakes, what happens to all the fishes then? They also get eradicated. So by association, bad association, I am getting unnecessarily cannon fodder. Ravana, you seem to have made up your mind to destroy all Rakshasas. But why me? Because you have to understand that association with bad people comes with a very heavy price, because we end up sharing their karma phalas too. So when we are talking about satsanga and its importance, it is equally important to understand the dussanga, bad association. See, there are people who go to all these satsangas, and then few minutes later you will find them, they will go to all junk forums. They will be talking all sorts of junk. See, we have to make a choice between being a honeybee or a butterfly or being a housefly. Now, if you are a bee or a butterfly, what happens? You will always end up going from nectar to nectar, flower to flower. But if you are a housefly, you will go one time and sit in the prasada of Bhagavan. Next minute you will be going and sitting in the sewer. Some rotten carcass, it is going to sit on it. So our mind needs to be protected. Now, I am not critiquing you or me. Please don't misunderstand. I am telling this. That is what Maricha and Ravana are having conversation, and we are trying to find the applicability of some of the things which we didn't get time to go in detail. So, if you want, you can go to the Aranyakanda and go through those chapters, and you will find many of those links in the article which I have given in the link above. Now, it is also another thing we need to learn, practical lesson we need to know is whom do we listen to? Whom do we listen? See, Ravana had a lot of well-wishers who told all sorts of good things. Starting from Vibhishana, then his Malyavan, grandfather figure, then Maricha. He also had his own wife Mandodari tell. But Mandodari's discussions are only captured towards the end when she laments and said, I have told you about all this, but there is no actual conversation there, unlike these other characters, where we can go and mine all this wisdom. And then you also have people like Kumbhakarna come, and our next character we will analyze is the wisdom from Kumbhakarna. Okay, in the series, whenever we do that, whether it is next week or the week after, I don't know, but we will do that. And then you also find people like Hanuman, Angada come and give advice. On top of that, Sita and Ravana have a conversation. Sita gives so much wisdom to Ravana. It's amazing, and sometimes we think it is Sita Ravana Samvada. No, Sita is addressing people like you and me only. Sometimes Mata Sita cannot get to our head. So she is using this figure of Ravana. So let us understand the importance of so many people. Like if you look at Mahabharata, same story. How many rishis came and advised both Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana? Forget about the people who were there along with them all the time, like Bhishma, Drona, Kripa, or people like Vidura. Forget about them. There were so many rishis, including Narada, who comes and gives information. And on top of that, Bhagavan Krishna himself comes and gives Vishwarupa Darshana. First to these idiots only. Again, why I say idiot? Because they saw Bhagavan, but they didn't get the message. Just like sometimes we read Ramayana, Mahabharata, Upanishads, Gita, all those things, and then we go back to futile discussions, dry arguments, discussions, but we don't focus on, hey, how do I take this and make it as part of my life? That one question can be so transformative. But we refuse to ask that question because we are creatures of habit. We go back to the habit again and again and again. So just like Ravana was a creature of habit, so what happens? I do a karma, and before I do a karma, I am thinking about it. I have my likes and dislikes. Right? So I have my own likes and dislikes, and then I generate more vasanas through my thoughts, words and actions. And then while that process of all this thinking, doing and acting, I am generating more vasanas. Now I did the action, but I have to wait. You have to wait. You wrote the exam, you are waiting for the results. You are still thinking about it. Now that is also generating vasanas. Now I have made the vasana, the karma phala I have got. I have got the fruit of my karma. Am I going to be quiet? Again I am sitting and thinking, you know what? I wish I had. I like that laddu. I wish I ordered one more laddu. I am still thinking about generating more vasanas. This non-stop vasanas keeps distorting our manas, our mind. And this mind is already distorted by another agency, that is the five senses. Because it is already distorted and predisposed because of the vasanas, because of the indriyas, the mind permanently goes and sits in the world of sensory objects. It doesn't want to come. It doesn't want to leave it. Now, we have three instruments. We have the body, which is the external instrument. We have two internal instruments, Antakarana, the Manas and Buddhi. Now, theoretically, this Buddhi will come and tell you, don't do that. Imagine a boy is getting into alcohol or drugs or smoking first time. or any child, there will be a shame, sense of, no, I should not do that. But once they go past that, once they develop a ruchi in that, they are not going to go back. So we are caught in this trap. So every action we do, we are more inclined to act on our raga dveshas, on our vasanas, on our indriyas, rather than what buddhi says. And buddhi is a funny thing. When it is not used, it goes into the backyard. It goes into the corner. So Bhagavan Krishna says, we will break this logjam. How do we do that? In Bhagavad Gita, chapter 6, sloka 5, that's your magic solution. We are not going to go deep into that, but that's your solution. What Krishna is saying is, take your buddhi and put it on a very high place where the mind doesn't normally go. And what is that very high place? Bhagavan. You put it at the lotus feet of Sri Ramchandra or any Ishtadevata. It can be just one word of caution. When you are thinking of Devi, don't follow this Canadian idiot lady who has gone there and imagine Kali Devi with smoking and all. Ishtadevata is filled with only Kalyana Guna. I had to tell that because today these people are claiming to be Hindus and they are coming with all sorts of bad images. Now the mind is gonna search, hey, where is this buddhi? This fellow used to be there. I used to ignore him all the time. Now I can't even ignore him. Where is it? It has gone to a place very high. So what it does? It goes to search for that. Now when the mind is also trying to get closer to buddhi, all the hold it had on the indriyas, vasanas, raga, dvesha, all those things start falling down one by one by one. You see how beautiful Krishna has given this? It's so easy to even explain because it is as easy to follow as long as we follow what Krishna says. So Bhagavad Gita is a treasure trove. And I would recommend all of you to at least pick up one good commentary. Now, if you don't have any favorite commentator, my suggestion will be pick up Swami Chinmayananda because he talks the language in English and all of you are following English. Second thing is he talks in the language of science and modern personality. And after you have mastered Swami Chinmayananda commentary, then go to Gita Super Site. You will find a dozen acharyas have given commentary in different languages. Hindi, Sanskrit, English. You can put that and do a comparative study after you have mastered one commentary. Don't do this otherwise because get strong in one. So, who do you listen to? That is a deep topic by itself. Two more points and then we are done. Now, there is a conversation between Rama and Sita. I don't know if you have had this lecture, but if not, we will have it later. Rama and Sita have a discussion on the roots of violence, on the nature of violence. I'm not sure if there is a talk, if it is there in Tamil or not, I don't know. But maybe go and check it up on the YouTube channel. I don't recall. In that, when they come after visiting Sharabanga and Sutikshana, Rama is being confronted by Sita and she says, why are we carrying weapons? We have no enmity with the Rakshasas. Why should we do that? And then she says, whenever you have a desire, there are three forms of bad outcomes that come. The first one is, if you remember, we already understood it is not desire that is the problem, because desire plus attachment that becomes the problem. Because the desire comes with the, just like as a postage stamp comes with what is it, like glue already added, at least in US and all. So you just take it and stick it. So same way this desire comes with attachment. So if you hold on to that, it will lead you to asatya, untruth. Second problem you will get is, you will develop enmity with anyone and everyone, because you are holding on to desire. My desire, I, me, my is more important. So I don't care about what Ganesh ji or Arvind ji is talking about. Who cares about it? I want what I want. So we end up with that problem. The third problem is, you will end up liking another person's spouse. And today we are in India. We come, especially if you come to Tamil Nadu, we have this land of Dumils, the place where they are openly talking about extramarital affairs as if it is part of our culture. They are promoting it. I am not talking about part of culture. I will give you an example. A couple of months ago, there was a mother in southern part of Tamil Nadu. Now, why I say Tamil Nadu? Because it was supposed to be the model conservative. When I say conservative, not in terms of political persuasion, I am talking about in terms of dharmic persuasion. There was this mother who had an extramarital affair. She had two small kids, one baby and one very small kid or something like that. And she wanted to elope with this extramarital affair guy. So she gave poison in the form of food and gave it to the two children, and they died. A mother killing her own children so that she can elope with some third-rated rascal. So why is this? Desire can take all these forms. This is in a separate discussion, we will look at it. But the irony here is, we already saw how Ravana gave a long list of adjectives of negative, and it was all his own reflection of himself, and he could not visualize what Rama was. But Maricha was able to see who Rama was. And then the second thing here we see is, all the flaws what Sita is listing is found with Ravana. Does he do asatya? Yes. Is he hankering after somebody's wife? Yes, he even kidnaps her. And he even rapes many others before Sita. So, he is already got. And does he create unwanted enmity? Yes. Rama was looking at not even his direction. He goes and creates a problem. And that is only one example. He goes into trouble with every other person. But that's only one example. Now, what is the last thing? Now, those are all modifications of desire we have to be cautious about in our life. The last lesson for us is, Maricha was deep rooted in Tamas. He was a Rakshasa. Despite all his tamasic overbearance, he was able to, whenever he came in contact with Rama only 2 times. And both the times he got acquainted with Rama and his Divya Guna only in the form of Rama bana. That is Rama's arrow. Right? But what has happened? Let us analyze that state what Maricha went into before we conclude this talk. Maricha goes to a state where he sees one Rama, he sees many Ramas, he sees everything as Rama. Everything sounding Rama is also reminding him of Rama. So on the path of bhakti or dhyana or whatever we go, we will also go through the same state. Now, what Maricha did was he approached it with fear. Just like Kamsa did later approach Bhagavan through fear. And Bhagavan is still blessing him. Whereas some people, we saw that in that earlier lecture, we choose Krishna in whichever form he is going to bless us. You can listen to that also in the old talk series. That how Paundraka Vasudeva was imitating Krishna, but Krishna still blessed him with Vaikunta. How Shishupala was non-stop doing abuse, still he got blessed. Putana wanted to give only poison instead of milk, but even though she was fake feeding him, Bhagavan still gave the blessing. So, Maricha, despite all that negativity, got contact with the Shuddha Sattva of Bhagavan, and he was able to have a little transformation. Now what happened, if the transformation was given some time, it would have gone deeper. But there was not enough time for that germling, that seedling to germinate. So we take the, we know the story of Jaya and Vijaya, right? The fallen doorkeepers of Mahavishnu. You look at the first avatara, Hiranyaksha and Hiranyakashipu, Bhagavan Rama had to take 2 avatars to take care of them. In Ramayana, as Ravana and Kumbhakarna, Ravana just, I mean like Ravana, if you really look at his, all the greatness of Ravana, despite all his greatness, there was a hollowness in all that success. You come to Krishna Avatara, Shishupala gets a blessing of Krishna and he gets absorbed. Dantavakra is barely mentioned. Is barely mentioned except in Srimad Bhagavatam. One small chapter. He's not even as a decent sidekick. Even Shishupala is a jokester. He's not even considered as a villain. You see the maximum joke in practical joke on all these characters, if you see, it would be on Shishupala. He decides to marry Rukmini. Krishna lets all the events to go, and just at marriage time he comes and he takes her. He can't even hold the bow and arrow and fight. He can only abuse. Why is that slide important? Whenever negativity comes in contact with 100% Shuddha Sattva, there is a positivity charged. There is an impact. You have a cave that is closed for 1,000,000 years. You take your flashlight or your lamp and you are walking in. Eventually you are going to spread light. But instead, you have a bunch of holes put on the top. Now bright sun is entering. You don't have to do anything. Sunlight will do its thing. That is the difference. So whenever you ask the question, I can't make a change in society, I can't change in myself, I can't do this, I can't do that, the only answer you need to ask is, how much positivity or sattva guna I am bringing to counter this tamo guna? If your answer is not enough, then change that equation. And the last point here we have to remember, if Maricha can evolve, so can we. Maricha is the biggest hope giver for all bhaktas. If one Rama bana can elevate, then imagine the power of Rama Nama. Don't forget that. If one Rama bana can elevate, the fear of one Rama bana was able to transform Maricha, But before the transformation was complete, again bad association is another lesson we already saw. It can take us backwards. So here we have to understand that. So I know that I have gone way over time, but this is a very powerful topic, and we can talk a lot more, but I will pause here to conclude. Let us all think about the lotus feet of Sriman Narayana, of Sri Ramachandra Murthy, that Purushottama. Jai Sri Ram, Jai Sri Krishna, Har Har Mahadev.